So what I did is I worked with that town manager to physically show him what I could not do, my struggles, what raised the concerns, but also helped educate him in working with our town manager to explain to him how we need to make all access points ADA compliant. In working with our town city leaders, instead of being going after them and yelling, to me, yelling and shouting gets nothing done. But being diplomatic about it and working with the town leaders, working together, that helped me getting access points compliant, if that helps.
Today, we have Stephen Hawk, who is a resident of Ware, Massachusetts. Ware is spelled W-A-R-E. He's an active user of the local rail trail. It's under development. Some parts are open, some parts not yet. As a wheelchair user, Stephen relies on the trail several times a week for transportation, grocery shopping, visiting family and friends, and enjoying time outdoors. His experience highlights the importance of accessible community spaces that support independence, connection, and mobility for people of all abilities. Thanks for coming on here today, Stephen. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. You've got a great story to tell here today.
I want to thank you, Craig, for having me on your podcast and being the engine force behind the Mass Center Rail Trail and being a big spokesperson and taking me under your wing when we first connected about the rail trail that was through Ware. I can't thank you enough for you taking me under your wing and also mentoring me about and educating me about the rail trail. So the thank is really to you, sir.
Thank you, Stephen. This is an awakening experience for you. I think I might have mentioned to you I had an uncle who was in a wheelchair, and I'll never forget that experience. And to have you come into my life and loving the rail trail, and yet it's not really moving forward enough in Ware. And I said to myself, this guy should become the leader of the trail effort in Ware. And you are fulfilling your mission. You're doing a great job there. And so I'm glad to have you on the podcast here today. This is before we get to my set of questions here. I got an email this morning from one of Cynthia Henshaw's staff that they have an accessible workshop coming up. Have you been made aware of that yet today?
No, I wasn't aware of that, but I'm very excited to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you after we're done. I get back to my normal day here. I'll send that link to you if you haven't had it already. But it is East Quabbin Land Trust, because of your experience in leadership, is evolving to make their overall mission more in line with what you're doing here. So this is thumbs up to you, Steve. The accessibility and how the rail trail can open up your life. There's a couple of questions for you. How accessible design impacts everyday independent living and mobility, and why inclusion in universal design can benefit everyone in a community. Let's start on those two couple things there.
I think that inclusion is a great thing for not just for myself, but as people get older, we all slow down, we all use assistive devices, and with the rail trail provides this. And I've always been an outdoorsman, and after my car accident 23 years ago, I believe my passion for the outdoors has only gotten more exciting because I've always been someone that tell me I can't do something because of my situation. I try to find other ways of still being able to do it, and my love and passion for the outdoors makes me fight for not just myself, but anyone that wants to still enjoy the outdoors, be able to and have the possibility. And when we bought our house here in Ware 16 years ago, that's when I first noticed that there was a trail in the woods, and it took quite a few years to get it designed and built so I could have total access to the trail. But it's definitely worth the fight and the effort.
Here's a question here. How public spaces such as the rail trail can create more connected towns?
Can you say that again, Craig?
Sure. How public spaces like the rail trail can create more connected towns?
Oh, where do I begin with that? That's an amazing question. See, with someone like myself, I first thought with my car accident that I would be sheltered at my house, which you can obviously understand being in a wheelchair, you feel sheltered. With the rail trail, it has completely opened up my life. It has made me be able to be possible to go grocery shopping, go visit family, visit friends. And with the rail trails, which I love, it's mostly ADA compliant because, as we know, it was the former rail beds. And if you imagine the trains on the train tracks, it's flat and level,
Mhm.
which is great. And with me being in a wheelchair, I know it's safe to use because it's flat level. And it is the rail trails can completely open up people's life who use assisted devices. And in the small town of Ware, there is a large elderly population, and now with senior housing more coming in, the rail trail is going to benefit the small towns even more. So we have more access because not every elderly person drives or someone who is disabled. So with this rail trail, now anyone and everyone has total access to the whole town of Ware, which is amazing.
Talking about the ADA compliant and accessibility awareness, this is interesting. Talk about the key improvements that make trails safer and easier for people with disabilities. I know that a couple of years ago you were pointing out to the town that there were some deficiencies in the interconnection between the rail trail and the city street, their town street, and how signage, surface materials, and entry points affect usability.
When I first started using the trail back in say 2012, I was only had access to half of the trail due to the design that wasn't built up to the way it is now. I used to call it, as you might remember, a beaten path trail in the woods that
Okay.
was put there many years ago. I was able to safely access it from my house, but halfway through there was a steep incline and decline going down a hill that was on an angle and a bad slant. And I was commenting with through email with our town manager and asked him if this is a public trail. He said yes it is, and I showed him how it's not safe for me to use. And he goes, to me it looks safe. You can just go ahead and go down the trail. And I shook my head and I said, not to be mean or anything, but that's a safety hazard. And he scratches his head and goes, how is that a safety hazard? So I had to explain to him somebody in a wheelchair, they can't safely go down any steep inclines, declines, and that is on an angle. So about 3 years of me explaining to him over and over again about the compliance and the safety. That's when the light bulb went off at the town about making sure they're up to date with ADA laws and making sure ADA compliant. And they thanked me for raising the concerns about how it was not safe for someone like myself in a wheelchair to use.
That's a great story. It's a great story. I remember one section was muddy at the intersection with the trail, and I'm glad they improved it. Here's talking about your voice there, encouraging town leaders to step up on this. How residents can advocate for inclusive trail planning and what steps local towns can take to start or improve their rail trail projects, and tell us some more success stories that you've had in Ware.
Well, one thing that I started doing is the big thing that the town of Ware was deficient in was educating the public that there even is a rail trail in their town. Because for so many years, my neighbors lived here for over 30 years that lived right along the rail trail, never knew about it. And I think the more we educate the public in our towns and cities that there is a rail trail and to keep getting the word out and publicizing about the rail trails and what communities are running into, but then also having public events to inviting the public out, like I have done with the Ware Senior Center and at the town hall to educate people about the rail trail and to get them involved and educated about the rail trails, which has really helped out a lot.
It's great. It's great. How can local towns ensure their rail trails are ADA compliant? What's the most common accessibility challenges towns face, and what solutions make the biggest difference for wheelchair users? That's a great question.
I think the biggest challenge that I had was at the entry points of the rail trail were not ADA compliant. They assumed that it was because of their lack of understanding about what ADA compliant was, and someone like myself faced of how we needed it to be accessible because I'm not in a bicycle or I don't walk, so they automatically assume that just because a bicyclist could have access to it, that anyone and everyone could, which is a misnomer. So what I did is I worked with that town manager to physically show him what I could not do, my struggles, which raised the concerns, but also helped educate him in working with our town manager to explain to him how we need to make all access points ADA compliant. In working with our town city leaders, instead of being going after them and yelling, to me, yelling and shouting gets nothing done. But being diplomatic about it and working with the town leaders, working together, that helped me getting access points ADA compliant, if that helps.
So that access point you're talking about, the most familiar one I'm thinking of is in the Lowe's or Walmart parking lot where the trail comes in there and the kiosk is there. And that's a relatively new installation there. Was that one of the problem points or was it somewhere else?
That was a main problem point because right there to get from Walmart parking lot was a safety hazard because when I had to cross the road right there was no crosswalk there. And then once you cross the road, there was a berm that was right there that was blocking my access, and there was no signs, which the people, I kept telling people for years about the rail trail and about how great it is, but they're literally driving by it because they assumed that was someone's driveway. So with the town getting a kiosk built, getting many signs built, working with the landowner, WS Development, getting a crosswalk put in. So it's not only safe for pedestrians, but also for the vehicles.
Okay,
And
I didn't,
everyone,
that's interesting. I didn't realize that, how that happened there. That's interesting. What,
it's interesting, but unfortunately, 2 years ago on Thanksgiving Day, after my dad had to go for his walk on a rail trail, and some unknown was at Lowe's parking lot or Walmart parking lot, I nearly got hit
oh,
because someone was driving so fast at the Lowe's parking lot. There was no signs and no crosswalk. That's what got me started about getting the right signs put up for the vehicles and the crosswalk.
so it has been, the mission's complete. They've been made those improvements to the parking lot there.
They made that they made those improvements within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Within
Wow.
2 weeks.
Did they
That's how
track
fast
down
they
the
were.
guy who was speeding there? Or no, they didn't. Whatever happened to
They,
him?
they didn't track down, they didn't track down the guy. I contacted the WS development that owns the land, told them what happened, and they asked me so many questions of how can they help me, and before I could get done the email, they had a crew down there doing site work, getting a study done to get the signs put up and the crosswalk put in.
Wow, that's great. Did they ever interview you as a part of their day-to-day operations there to see what else they could do that would be improving there?
They never did an interview, but they still keep in contact through emails with me to ask how
Okay.
everything's going. And they always say if there's anything we ever need with the rail trail, don't ever hesitate to ask them because I also explain to them how much business it's bringing. And I try to look out for the safety of both the pedestrians that use the rail trail to go there, but also people driving there.
As things develop in Ware, and there'll be opportunities for them to step up with some money for a local match, go towards the local match on a project that gets larger state funding. So there's opportunities for them to keep them in the loop, so to speak, there. Go on some more here. Let's see. What's the best? Here's something interesting. What's the best questions to ask your local leaders about improving accessibility? How can citizens start productive conversations with officials, and what examples can help motivate action in small towns like this?
The first thing someone can do, and like myself, I've done is a lot of people in my situation, unfortunately, are hesitate to ask questions or feel scared to ask questions because we either feel like we don't deserve it or we don't want to ruffle any feathers. And my big thing is don't be afraid to ask your local leaders, local town managers, select board members, and city councilmen. If you have any problems, don't be afraid to ask. I know it's always sometimes not always a easy thing to ask, but go to your town leaders, find out who they are. But my big thing that I was raised with, just be diplomatic about it and be persistent about it and ask them questions, even if it is a tough questions. If we don't ask these, like if I didn't start asking, things don't get done.
Yep,
So what I started doing was emailing our town manager, calling him many times over the years, and just stay persistent. And I always had to have someone be an advocate for myself when I first got in a car accident. So now I think of us being advocates for the rail trail because the rail trail can't speak for itself, correct? So being a big advocate and being the voice is something that we can all learn to do, and try not to be afraid and feel that you are worthy to ask your town city questions. Ask them how can things get improved, and yes, we all deserve to enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the rail trails, no matter what situation you're facing.
this is all great, Steve. Let's talk about the future vision. What's your future vision for the accessible trail sections here? How could technology or design information innovations improve access, and what would a truly inclusive trail network look like to you?
To me, it would bring small businesses into town, bring small Airbnbs, bring some coffee places in town, and try to help people, try to help Ware get on the map and bringing things together. And like I was talking yesterday, it'd be really nice to get back to being a small little town of having a newsstand, having a place to go get a cup of coffee, and where we live between Springfield and Worcester, there is no motels, there's no Airbnbs, which would be great to bring here in town because for most people, they ask me, where is Ware? I said, do you know the Carbon Reservoir? They go, yeah, that's where Boston gets the water, right? I said, where is right below that? They go, oh, we didn't think anything's past 495. And there is a lot out in west of 495. And I always think of the town of Ware and all these small little town villages. It's also a great place if you think about it for people that like to write short little books. These small little towns out in the country, it's even me myself, I can just go on the trail and just sit there and relax and just start. I love to write myself, even being a quadriplegic, and my mind's at ease, and I just take a big breath. And I don't know, our small little towns is so much opportunity, and to me, nothing beats small little towns in New England, and it's great.
That's right. Everybody knows your name. The what's notable about for Ware, my realm here, is that you have a local land trust which evolved from just buying big forest lands or farmland, rectangular lands, let's say, but they're deeply involved in this linear land, narrow but long linear land, and to make it into a trail that trails that pass through small towns as opposed to very rural mountainous areas, but trails built from dead railroads going through small towns create a renaissance in the downtown that you guys are very lucky to have East Quabbin Land Trust, which is nationally known in the land preservation world for not just doing rectangular lands, forest lands, farmlands that other land trusts do, but they also do linear lands or the third place. type places. If Have you ever heard of the third place, the first, second, and third place? It's a concept that was written in a book in the late 80s, I think, by a guy who was from Keene, New Hampshire, not far away. The first place in your life is your family. The second place in your life is the workplace, where you see people in that realm. The third place in life is where you see people outside of the first two. And lots of times that was a church, local tavern, local Rotary Club or Kiwanis Club, or other civic organizations. But lots of places that third place is diminished. The rail trail is a third place where you see people outside of the first two, which makes the town more vibrant and more thoughtful. Now, East Quabbin Land Trust, in the world of third place stuff, yes, they're involved in the rail trail development in your service territory there. But they also do something else up in Petersham, at the other end of the Quabbin Reservoir. You're at the south end, up at the north end, that community of Petersham. There was a general store there that was falling into disrepair. The couple that owned it was getting elderly. They couldn't spend the time or the money to redo the capital projects that were getting worn out, deferred maintenance. So they sold it to East Quabbin Land Trust, who fixed up the deferred maintenance, and they leased it to a young couple who opened it up as a general store and a cafe where people can sit and have lunch or breakfast. And so they do that third place renovation stuff. And so they're going to be doing this, a lot of the work in town that the town isn't normally equipped to do here. They'll be involved in the project as much or as little as the town wants, but they're going to be doing things that are going to be very impactful. And they brought a connection into beautiful Grenville Park and get to the south side here of Grenville Park and find a route through the downtown and cause a renaissance in the downtown of Ware. So you've got East Quabbin Land Trust with Cynthia Henshaw, and then you have Cindy Bussier and her husband, and your makings of this friends group, Friends of the Ware section, whatever you're going to call it, that's going to help provide inspiration and cover for the town to move this forward. It's very exciting. And this is what haven't we covered yet, Stephen, that you'd like to cover? What do you think?
What parts would I like to cover for the town, or
Cover for our podcast today? Now, what do you think I haven't covered with you today?
to go back to the general store in Petersham? Before my accident, I used to go there quite a bit when I went hunting for 6 years.
Oh,
At that general store is where we used to bring our turkeys and our deer in during the spring and summers, where we used to go to get minnows, to then go out to the Quabbin and Gate 43 in Hardwick to go fishing, and also to go to Wachusett Reservoir to go fishing.
yes.
So I've been all over the state, both as a youth but also as an adult. And that we're talking about the third place is Jessica Millen, who I got to meet, who lived out in Natick. I've met her a few times now on the trail. And someone that lives in Ware, Massachusetts, I've seen people all throughout the state come through the town and also wanting to ask me if they can come travel to Ware, see what the trail looks like. So I'm making friends all over the state and outside the state that are coming right through Ware, which I never thought was possible.
That's great. That's a great story. Boy, tell me about your mom and your sister on this journey here for your advocacy and how they're advocating with you and how they're handling all this stuff?
They absolutely love it, and my mom and sister are my driving force behind me. They've been there all the way with me, and my sister has a small Pekingese dog, and I call her PCA number 3. And for those that don't know, PCA stands for personal care attendant, and she absolutely loves the rail trail. And I always tell her Bella, her name's Bella, and I tell her if you walk the first part, I'll give you a ride home. And she loves that. As long as we go, she gets a ride home, and she absolutely loves it. So she's a big advocate of the rail trail too, and she gets all the dog owners to get their dogs outside the house and use the rail trail to not just for them to go for a walk, but take their dogs for a walk, which is a great thing because believe it or not, Craig, there's 13 dogs in our small little cul-de-sac, so
13.
which is a
Huh.
great thing, and 13 puppy dogs. Yeah,
So I bet
but my mom and
you know
sister
the names of the
absolutely
people
love the
first.
rail trail.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephen. Go ahead.
My mother and sister absolutely love the rail trails, and they know my love and passion for the outdoors, and they love going for walks all over the trails because we used to travel to Hadley. There used to be a place called Sylvia's Wildlife Refuge
Oh, yeah.
that would go to, I think it's in Hadley. And we had to travel a good 45 minutes just to
Yeah.
go there. And it's a nice, takes 3/4 of a mile trail that goes into the woods. It's a nice, beautiful trail. But now I get to actually go outside my house, go down the street, and go on the trail that's even bigger and longer. So I don't have to travel 45 minutes out of the way. It's literally right in my backyard. And my mother and sister love going for walks with me. And my sister picks on me because she calls me like the trail ranger. Because I always try to educate people. This is what that means. This bridge has to be so wide and so long because the brook is this big and kind of in a cute sister way. She goes, Stephen, you're the rail trail ranger. You know that? I go, I have a big smile. It makes me feel good because when I take friends for walks that at the beginning of their first time and then multiple times, I try to do my best of explaining the history of the trail, but also pointing out where things are because that interests them.
So you mentioned you had 13 dogs on your street that connects to the rail trail. Obviously, people are taking their dogs out there for a walk. And is everybody picking up after their dogs? I know that sometimes around here that's lacking. Is that what's the experience
For the
there?
most, yeah, for the most part, there's always people in the park at Gibbs Crossing from out of town. Unfortunately, there's no trash barrels at the entrance and exits. I need to work on with the DPW to ask them if we can start setting up trash barrels along the trail because there is no place for someone to put the doggy bags in trash barrels. But the
Here's a
more people
project
that
for you.
walk on,
Here's a project
what's
for you,
that?
Stephen. You can go to your friends there at the development corporation that manages the big box stores there and tell them that you want to put a series of signs and maybe barrels for people to throw their dog waste, and you can get a grant to do that, and they can contribute towards the grant. Does that make sense?
That's a really good suggestion, and I'll do that this afternoon. I'm glad you brought that up.
See if they'd be open to the idea of making the local match for that. I would have one of the Cynthias go and research a grant from Mass Trails team because they're opening up for the next grant round. And you don't have to have just one grant coming to Ware for some big project by the East Quabbin Land Trust or maybe Cynthia Boussier's in your friends group. You can have several. Why not? And get funded for all of them.
Excellent. I like that. I like that idea a lot. Definitely.
Yeah, just a little thing that's missing. You mentioned you didn't have any signage there, or sometimes there's deficient connections to town streets. Maybe there's a way to put a stockpile of that specialized soil near where the connections get frayed between the asphalt and the special soil, stone dust there, that have a little stockpile for somebody to go with a shovel and patch it up. You don't have to make a big town project, but just somebody on a regular walk that they're going to have a little shovel with them to go and do little fix-ups and have a little stockpile there and maybe have a little shed above it to keep it from being washed away by rain. All these little minor details that make for a little more complete trail that you have there.
I definitely like that idea. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a big project. Believe me, they love small projects too. And they will still come for a ribbon cutting for your teeny tiny project too.
Oh, nice. I love that.
Yeah. And it becomes a neighborhood project too, that the neighborhood is being picked up in here. And just things are going well. Let's see, what else can I ask here? We talked about almost everything. Everything. I think one more thing here is how could technology or design innovations improve access? You're out on the trail often, always. And is there technology? Does the town of Ware have a, well, tell me, what do you think here?
Something that I was thinking that someone brought up at the public housing service was QR codes for the kiosk would be great.
What would that lead to? They're shining a phone on it and it leads to something else. Where would it go? Do you have an idea? Does the town need to set up something or a friends group? What do you think?
What would the QR code show them in town, or
I think, how about your Ware Civic and Business Association? Isn't there something like that?
that would be good, and it would show people exactly what is in where and what they can find and where they can go and do things in town. And because we got from outside of town that don't know where things are, where or near the end of the rail trail. When you start from Gibbs Crossing, they don't know that the senior center is on the other side and or Big White Plaza, and there's a lot to offer on the other end. If they look on the QR code, they get to see how much more Ware can benefit them, which would be
Well,
good.
that's a good idea. That's called wayfaring. There's a planning jargon word called wayfinding, and to show where nearby services and things would be useful. Here's another talking about QR codes. I have a lecture coming up in mid-December for the Boston and Maine Railroad Historical Society. And I'm going to be talking about how complicated and Byzantine it is to build rail trails in Massachusetts. And I want to get them involved. and stand up a program where the QR code, you shine it, will have like a little obelisk on the trail. You shine your phone on it, and it takes you to a section of a website about what you're looking at right there. It might be a mile marker, or maybe it's an old building that was railroad related, or an old industrial building, or some other little artifact that's visible. It'll talk about what that thing was, what it meant, what it did, and go to a larger website that has like 100 to 150 QR code points on it. And the Boston and Maine Railroad has all this information out there, and photos and things that are set up already. I think they would love to be a part of that and be part of the signage on that. There's the Mass Trails team has already set up special fonts, color schemes for historic signage on the trail, which is different in Massachusetts. Most times, just towns do their own thing, and they might have different color schemes, different fonts, different this, so it doesn't look uniform. But on signage on this trail, they're going to make it so that everything is uniform. So you see signs in one community, and maybe 50 miles away, there's another community that has begun that historic call out stuff with the same color schemes and fonts and everything, though it's going to be uniformly designed. And I'm going to get the B&M Railroad to be involved on this. B&M Railroad Historical Society. And little projects can be just little tiny projects, or they can be little projects, but long projects across the entire state that will make it useful and be a family event to be able to take their kids and learn about all these places they've never been to before, like Ware, and learn about these places and all the history there.
Exactly. There's so much history along the road trail, especially what it used to be in like Calvin Coolidge back in the day actually used to travel what we're walking on. There's so much deep history, and I absolutely love it. And only being 42 years old, the one thing I love about it's history of what towns, our cities, our states, and where stuff used to be, and I absolutely love it. So
that's why people come to Massachusetts. They come here to explore history and these old traditional neighborhoods. And next year is the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. And it all started here, and people come to Massachusetts to learn about history. So this fits.
well, I think we definitely live in the best part of the United States, and I know I'm being a little biased, but I love New England, and I would never leave, and you'd have to pull me out of where we live.
Me too. All right. So I think we're going to wrap this up now, Stephen. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for tuning in to Roads Less Traveled with Craig Della Penna. I hope today's episode gave you fresh ideas and inspiration for exploring the unique world of real estate, rail trails, and bike tourism. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show so we can reach more trail lovers and real estate enthusiasts like you. Stay connected, stay curious, and I'll see you next week with more expert insights and stories from the Roads Less Traveled.